I'm the newly appointed, I suppose, Fingal Climate Action Coordinator, but I've been taking over from somebody who was in the job quite a while and did a fabulous job and put together our Climate Action Plan, which I have a copy of if anyone wants to have a look at. Leave it there. Okay, so what does a Climate Action Coordinator do? My job, I suppose, is to mainstream climate action across the local authority activities. Local authorities, as you all know, if you interact with your local authority, it's in everybody's lives, it's in every part of the community. So our job is to look at ourselves and see what we're doing and improve how we do what we do. So that's the first thing we have to do. So it's mainstreaming, that lovely word, local authority, or climate action across all sections of the council. So from the Chief Executive Office right down through the organisation and right across the organisation. So that's what I'm supposed to do. So it's not the smallest job in the world, but great to see. This is the cover of our Climate Action Plan, so you can see it. It's available on our website if you want to take a look at it. Okay. So I'm not going to talk about this too long. I just said as an introduction, I'll start with the bad news first. We're all aware of the climate risks facing Fingal. So rising temperatures, extreme flooding events, floods and storms, rising sea levels. Anybody that lives in Malahide is well aware of the threat of the rising sea levels, and that threat to coastal businesses and coastal homes. Impacts on infrastructure, transport and energy supply disruptions. We're well aware that we've got lots of data centres coming in here that are going to be making demands on our energy, and that's going to have impacts for ourselves. So these are all things that are going to be negative for us. Also then business vulnerabilities, operational risks and your supply chain disruptions. We recently had the pandemic and we all know what the consequences in terms of supply chain disruptions for people were, and climate impacts are also going to interrupt our supply chains. So before I go forward, I want to go back a little bit. Fingal County Council, like all things, was ahead of the curve in terms of climate action plan, and they had a climate action plan prepared in 2019 to 2024. So they've been working on climate action within the local authority since 2019 or earlier. I'm not going to go through all of the things that have been achieved on that plan, except maybe to highlight one or two things, such as the 100% of the county street lights are now LED, 30% of the council's fleet is now electric. But one other thing would be that all staff receive climate action training all across the organisation. As soon as you join the organisation, you're signed up for a climate action course, and that's so that all staff are aware that this is not my job, it's everybody in the local authority's job. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. So just in terms of why did we put this plan together? It came out of the Climate Action and Low Carbon Development Amendment Act of 2021. Nice long name for an act. The cone here on the right sets the policy context for why we have a climate action plan, and I'm not going to go through it. It's a lot of the same policy context that we have a lot of things that we're doing. But Section 16 of this Act said that each local authority shall make a climate action plan. So pretty much they're telling us we have to do a plan. The plan must contain actions on mitigation and adaptation. It had to be done within a 12-month time frame for 5 years and had to be approved by the elected reps, and meaning the elected members had to agree that we were going to carry out this plan. All of that has happened, okay? In terms of mitigation and adaptation, you've probably heard this before, but just quickly, mitigation is actions that reduce the emissions. So looking at our energy, looking at our resources that we use. So we're trying to reduce the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. That's our mitigation, and there's lots of different things that happen there. Transport, carbon sequestration, clean energy, energy efficiency. And then the adaptation, while even if we achieve 100% climate reduction, because there's so much carbon in the atmosphere, we're still going to see the effects of that carbon. So we have to be able to deal with the impacts, so the increased flooding, the increased rainfall, increased drought, which is kind of contradictory, but that's one of our other impacts. So the actions that manage and reduce the negative impacts of climate change, so looking at where we place our houses, looking at flood alleviation, putting disaster management plans in place and having emergency responses. Okay, and then the little bit in the middle talks about what can we do to make ourselves a little bit more resilient. Education, conserving our water, sourcing our resources as close to our production as possible, and looking at green infrastructure. Okay, just then, what am I talking about in terms of emissions? The total emissions of Fingal County Council area is 1.6 million tonnes of carbon equivalent, okay? And the biggest the biggest sector for that is our transport. 45% of the emissions in carbon, our carbon emissions in Fingal County Council come from transport, and then the next is commercial and residential. So I'm delighted to be here speaking to the commercial people of Fingal. Okay, so that's the county, but then in terms of the local authority, our emissions are 8.9 tonnes of carbon equivalent, and carbon dioxide equivalent, should I say. So 51% of that comes from our public lighting, 15% of that comes from municipal fleet, and 34% from our buildings and facilities. Now this figure was the 2018 figure. I would imagine if we look at this emission again, the public lighting has definitely gone down. So has, all of them have gone down, but the biggest one that's gone down is probably the public lighting. So we are taking action. So in terms of putting the plan together, we were charged with having actions in a number of areas. The first and most important piece was looking at ourselves and getting our own house in order. So what actions are we fully accountable for? So these are actions in areas under our own remit. So our own buildings, our own infrastructure, our operations and our staff. So within the plan, there's about 160 actions, and they're divided into areas that we have full responsibility for, areas that we can influence, areas that we can coordinate, and areas that we can advocate for. So there's quite a number of them are Fingal's own, getting their own house in order, okay? I should have mentioned at the start, in terms of emissions, local authorities nationally only emit 12% of the carbon emissions, so it's actually quite a low sector. However, we also have a role in influencing and coordinating other activities. So in terms of influencing, what we mean by that is we have an opportunity to influence how people do things through the things that we consent and through the things that we manage or through the things that we permit. So our planning applications, things that we regulate, our procurement, those are other areas where we can actually influence the amount of carbon emitted. Other things then, our role is in terms of coordinating, facilitating. You've learned what the LEO are doing, and there are other sections of the council that have the skills and have the experience in bringing communities together and working together. And it's us working together to help facilitate this action. So that's what the coordinated facilitation actions are about. And advocacy then, I suppose it's capacity building within communities, it's raising issues, it's raising awareness. We have 40 elected councillors, don't know how many TDs. Sorry, I'm only 2 months in the job, but I'll know that the next time. So basically our job is to advocate for climate action within Fingal. Okay. Now just then, in terms of the accountability piece, we have targets and matrices for our own, for what we're fully accountable for, and then we have key performance indicators for the other areas. So every year we are obliged to report on what have we done and how is it going. It's not a matter of, I'm 20-something years working in a local authority, and every time we do a plan, the first charge you get is not enough. Local authorities are brilliant at producing plans, and then sometimes people charge them with saying they never implement them. This plan we have to report on every single year, so we'll be judged every year on it. Just then, let's just get to the plan. Okay, the plan has targets in these areas, and it has a number of actions. Now, just catch up with me notes. I always write notes and I never use them. I just keep talking off the top of my head. So let me just catch up with myself. Bear with me. Right, the key goals of the plan. First of all, is to improve the council's energy efficiency by 50% by 2030. Okay, and to reduce our carbon footprint by reducing council's greenhouse gases emissions by 51%. By 2030. So they're fairly ambitious targets, okay? We also then have to build a climate resilient local authority or area, and to make sure that we're climate proof for further impacts. We also then are charged with engaging with and informing our communities on climate action, and part of that community, of course, is our economic sector. Also, we are responsible for promoting green economic growth within Fingal. So they are our targets, and the areas that we cover are energy, transport, flood resilience, land use, biodiversity, and public engagement. So in terms of our energy, we're required to promote renewable energy adoption, solar and wind power, and improve efficiency in buildings. In terms of our transport, encourage sustainable transport, EVs, bicycles, public transport, enhance cycling and pedestrian infrastructure. our waste management is to introduce zero waste initiatives. So you'll be hearing, I have a slide at the end, and you'll be hearing maybe from Grania if you have questions on the Conscious Cup and our actions on that. So that's one of our waste initiatives. And also the circular economy practices, the whole idea of keeping resources keeping resources within the economy and not having increasing wastes. Another area then is biodiversity and land use. So one of the interesting things is people talk a lot about the climate crisis, but the biodiversity crisis is out there, and it's the two sides of the same coin. Our biodiversity, if we look after our biodiversity, it has the greatest ability to assist us with our climate emergency. If we ignore our biodiversity emergency and ignore our ecosystem services provided by biodiversity, then we are damaging our ability to adapt to climate change. So they're both two sides of the same coin. Protecting ecosystem services, increasing green spaces and sustainable agricultural practices would be some of the actions that we hope to take there. Now, one of the other things that's come out as an action, and we were required to do it in the plan, and I'm not going to talk long about it because it doesn't concern Malahide at the moment, but it might in a minute. I've 1 more minute left, okay. And that's the decarbonisation zone. We were required to identify an area that we would focus on in the short term to see how these things what impacts our actions would have, and that is the decarbonisation zone in Balbriggan. Okay. We hope to be starting that in the next year, and the idea is that we'll try things out in Balbriggan, and if they're a success, we'll be able to extend them to other areas. You'll be hearing more about that in time to come. So opportunities, what opportunities are there for businesses in terms of climate action? Energy transition, implementing renewable energy solutions, your carbon footprint reduction, managing and measuring your emissions, your waste reduction, sustainable procurement and collaboration, working with partners, building networks, working together. This is not something that the local authority is going to solve on its own, something you're going to solve on your own, it's us working together. So I just end, I suppose, with a call to action. Well, actually, second last slide, I have another slide. Call to action for businesses. So what we're asking you to do is to take the first steps. Conduct the impact assessment for your business as identified by SEAI, explore funding opportunities, engage with the climate action resources and the community initiatives, and join your local community and be part of the solution to future-proof your business.